que ya saben cuando estamos leyendo no ficción. Osmar? Circular la información. ¿Qué más, Catherine?
The very first program began on the West Hills as an effort to provide an enriched education for mostly English native speakers, and also to save a neighborhood school. It was actually a way to attract families back into the schools. However, fast forward, we are now at 16 programs across 27 schools, K-12, 5 different languages, and we really have done a fundamental shift in our sense of purpose and why we do DLI, or dual language immersion. And that has shifted to all of our programs being prioritizing our historically underserved emerging bilingual children, or children who are identified as English as a second language. And that includes the very original program up on the hill that historically served mostly English-only children coming in to learn Spanish as a second language, to the degree now where over a third of the children in that program come from the regional area who are Spanish speakers. And the reason for that is because the research really clearly shows that dual language immersion is a game changer for those kids and their academic outcomes, and sets them on a trajectory for success, more so than any other service model out there for our ESL, our emerging bilingual children, to the degree where it is the only one that actually closes the opportunity gap. And that is supported by national research, as well as Portland Public Schools just completed a 4-year federal study looking at 19,000 student records over a 7-year period.
Ahora dice quién soy. Yo soy. Yo soy Daniela. Yo soy Carla. Yo soy Carlos. Yo soy Valeria. Yo soy Elizabeth. Yo soy Ana. ¿Y en qué están? ¿En qué grado?
I think the assumption might be, for some people, is that our families and who are English isn't their first language, that they would buy right into being into Spanish DLI or Russian or whatever. And that's not necessarily the case. There are those who really value their language and culture to the degree that they see this is really valuable, and they'll put their children in right away, and they understand the benefits for being bilingual, biliterate. But many of them, however, understand that the power language in the community is English, and that access to that, and that logical conclusion would be more time in English, all the time in English, would be better for their children. But as I just shared, that the research is that's actually not true. And actually, if we are going to really support them in the best way possible, is to build their first language. So all that said, within the world of languages, there are high status languages and there are low status languages by what the mainstream population. So we call it commodification, or the commodity languages. So right now, Spanish always is a fairly high commodity language, and so there's both those who are English speakers as well as those who are Spanish speakers view their language as valued. Often in society, there are all of the publishers produce materials in Spanish. There are lots of TV programs and so forth. Chinese is one that has just skyrocketed as a commodity language. There's value, there's economic things tied to that. But our Vietnamese population, however, don't feel that same valuing going on in the mainstream culture, to the degree where they internalize that, and they say, why would I want my child? I can teach them Vietnamese at home. We do hear this sometimes in other languages as well, but they're saying, I want my kid to get English at school. Even though we can share the graph and the data and the research, that's a hard barrier to overcome, to say that my language and culture is really valuable, even though what surrounds me is not telling me that the community around me, the news, the media, whatever, all the cultures at schools that are not giving that same message. So our job in the dual language department is to flip that narrative and really show that it can be an absolute positive and benefit academically, linguistically, and is actually really a critical step for them. And there's all kinds of other things in terms of identity, connection to family, heritage, that in the long run, we know that those have other very significant positive psychological benefits for those children. They're learner peers, and they're learning each other's languages and cultures, so they model for each other. And when they bring that native-like speaking ability and those cultural aspects together, that becomes an incredible learning opportunity. And that's why two-way immersion is more effective than just straight what we call one-way immersion, where there's one population learning the other language. We have no problem having English speakers interested in our programs. They are always the longest on the wait list. It's great to have a program, but if you don't have teachers, you don't have a program. So finding highly qualified, highly bilingual teachers, K-12, to be able to teach in those, teach the content and do it effectively is probably the number one obstacle to really expanding our equity of access and getting really, being able to serve all of our emerging bilingual children as well as serving all children. So to that end, actually 2 years ago, we initiated a alternative licensure program here because there's a teacher shortage across the United States. 2 years ago, we started the year in dual language immersion alone, we were 14 teachers short. So we partnered with the Oregon Department of Education and with our local university, Portland State University, to start an alternative licensure program that specifically is about growing our own dual language immersion teachers here in Portland. And what we found is that we have a lot of highly bilingual people who are highly educated, we're working in classified positions such as educational assistants or community agent positions, being paid a fairly low salary and not able to break through the financial and institutional barriers to be able to become a teacher. So in other words, they were not able to quit their job, support a family, pay $25,000 to the university in the hopes of getting a job. So we instead said we're going to create a program where we're going to move them into a teaching position with a restricted license, get them into a much higher paying job with full benefits, and be in a program and receiving the training. We have a boot camp in the summer, and we have coursework that goes on for 2 years while they're teaching, and we support them with our staff in our department and with our new teacher mentors. And we've been successful the last 2 years of starting the year with no shortage in dual language immersion. In fact, we've created a bench. We have teachers, now we have subs that are sitting there ready, who are bilingual and ready to go. If you're getting a full academic year benefit, an advancement in English reading for kids especially who are historically underserved, I think that the investment is relatively very inexpensive. So the problem is you have to get a paradigm shift on it. You have to have the mainstream core program realize that dual language immersion is not something, an extra that happens out here and you completely fund it outside. It is a core educational program. We teach all the district standards, same district standards, state standards. Kids are responsible for taking the same assessments and performing on the same assessments. So the core has to fund the same, provide the same support and the same sort of curriculum materials and professional development that you would for any educational program. It's just that you have to do a lot of it in 2 languages and you have to shift that. So yes, translating core materials, finding authentic literature and those kinds of things are an additional cost initially. I guess my question is, why not? Why aren't you doing it? Because if you understand, so when we step back and we talk about best educational practices, we talk about when a child walks into your classroom or into your school, and the best thing you want to do is to tap into their linguistic, cultural, social assets, and that's their capital they bring to school. if we don't invest that, and if we ignore that, or worse, if we try to shut that down and not see it as an asset that helps that child to achieve academic success, then I think we're morally and ethically being irresponsible. And I hate to be that strong about it, but that's what I honestly, that's where I land on it. And you are completely ignoring the research. And there's a win-win in all of this, because your English speakers also gain hugely out of this. So it's not like you're ignoring the other side of the coin, or the other half, or whatever, however percentage it is, they gain too. So it's not a necessity for them, but it is a huge enriching piece for them, and we know the linguistic, academic, cognitive, economic benefits for being bilingual, so why would you not do that? It takes hard work, it takes an investment in your staff, it takes hiring the right people, so it's not easy. And sometimes you have to fight the bigger cultural aspects of English-only policies. You know, we're fortunate we live in a state that has actually made a statement, pretty strong statement, in the opposite way.